The first time I almost died, it was a joke. The second time, I realized the universe wasn't laughing. It was the kind of irony you only see in movies. The guy who never asked for a hero ends up with one trailing his every step, silently, mysteriously, like some ghost in navy blue. And yet, every time danger found me, he was there. Always him. Always that stranger in uniform. I didn't know his name. I didn't know why he cared. But he knew me. And worse, he looked at me like he knew too much. I grew up in Queens, where sidewalks cracked under the weight of too many winters, and kids like me learned quick how to shrink. My mom always said I was too soft, too trusting, too open. She wasn't wrong. New York isn't kind to softness. I was 22 when I saw him the first time. A mugger came out of nowhere, knife pressed against my ribs, breath hot with cheap whiskey. I thought, so this is it. But then he appeared. A man in uniform, tall, commanding, eyes like storm clouds. He disarmed the guy like it was nothing. He didn't even look at me. He just asked, "Are you hurt?" In a voice so steady it scared me more than the knife. I said no. I lied. It didn't stop there. Weeks later, I stumbled out of a late-night shift, exhausted, city lights blurring into neon halos. Some drunk got handsy, wouldn't let go. And there he was again. Same officer, same stormy eyes. He didn't touch me. But the way he stood between me and the world made me feel something I wasn't ready to name. And when our eyes met that night, I swear there was recognition. Not like strangers, not even like friends. Something deeper, something that made me dizzy. I started noticing him everywhere. At the corner bodega, across the street from my building, sometimes even at the park where I jogged. Always just close enough to intervene, but never crossing the line. A shadow in plain sight. I should have been freaked out, but instead I felt safe, too safe. And that was the danger, because safety leads to trust, and trust leads to falling. But falling for a man who only existed when I was in danger? That wasn't love. That was insanity. Or so I told myself. The breaking point came one night in Brooklyn. It was raining, that kind of summer storm that feels like the sky's about to crack open. I was on the subway platform, headphones in, waiting. Then chaos. Some guy shoved me toward the tracks, screaming nonsense, eyes wild. My heart stopped. The screech of the train was deafening. And then strong arms yanked me back, chest against my back, breath ragged against my ear. It was him. For the first time, I felt his hands on me, not just protective, but desperate, like he couldn't bear the thought of losing me. When he pulled me against him, the world narrowed to the heat of his chest, the grip of his hands, and the way his voice shook when he whispered, "I've got you." And that was when I knew. This wasn't chance. This wasn't coincidence. He wasn't just a stranger. I confronted him, right there on the rain-slick platform, soaked to the bone, adrenaline making me shake. "Why?" I demanded. "Why do you keep showing up? Why me?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, his jaw clenched, his eyes flickered with something raw, something almost painful. "Because," he said quietly, "you matter." I laughed, bitter. "To who? You don't even know me." And then came the words that cracked my chest open. "I've known you for years." His name was Ethan Cole, NYPD, 28. He told me he'd first seen me when I was 19, fresh out of high school, working late shifts at the diner. Said I had this light, this way of smiling at strangers like they weren't strangers. And he couldn't forget. He confessed he'd been keeping watch quietly, without ever meaning for me to notice. He called it foolish. I called it insane. But the truth is, a part of me had felt it all along, that invisible tether, pulling me toward him. Still, it wasn't that simple. Because loving him meant danger. Loving him meant choosing someone who lived with a gun on his hip, a badge that made him a target. Loving him meant the risk wasn't over, it was just beginning. And I was terrified. But fear has a way of sharpening what matters. The night I finally let myself touch him, really touch him, it wasn't soft or easy. It was messy, heated. His hands shook when they cupped my face, as if he'd been holding back for years. His kiss was desperate, almost broken, tasting of rain and restraint snapping in two. I whispered against his lips, "You're not supposed to love me." And he answered, voice hoarse, "I've already failed at not loving you." The weeks that followed were chaos and quiet all at once. We stole moments, coffees at dawn, walks down back alleys where no one looked twice, the warmth of his hand brushing mine in crowded places where no one could see. Every touch was both a risk and a relief. But not everyone was blind. Danger followed me as it always had. Only now, it wasn't coincidence, it was connected to him. His cases, his enemies, the shadows that came with the uniform. And when they realized I mattered to him, they came for me harder. There were nights I swore it would break us. Nights I screamed that I couldn't live like this, always waiting for the next attack, the next shadow, the next loss. But Ethan never wavered. His eyes would lock on mine, steady and unshakable, and he'd say, "If I can survive the weight of this badge, I can survive loving you. If you let me." The final test came brutal and fast. I was grabbed outside my apartment, shoved into a van, duct tape cutting my wrists. My world blurred into terror, heart hammering, mind replaying his voice, his promises. I thought maybe this was it. Maybe destiny was cruel after all. But then sirens, shouts. The door ripped open and there he was. Bloody knuckles, wild eyes, fury carved into every line of him. He pulled me free like the world would end if he was a second too late. And when I collapsed against him, shaking, crying, he just held me. His voice cracked against my hair. "Never again. You're mine to protect. You always have been." That was the night I stopped fighting it. Stopped fighting him. Stopped fighting us. Because maybe love isn't safe. Maybe it's reckless, terrifying, messy. But maybe that's exactly why it matters. Now, when I wake in the small hours of the morning, his arm heavy across my chest, his breath steady against my neck, I understand. He was never just a stranger in uniform. He was the answer I didn't know I was waiting for. And he loved me all along. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.